Olodwa eringa ko pana nyari buno alum tong turko na kitil ka kopit. Ibu butong bar na ko nga gurutyo, ye bo ye ta obe ari butung alu.
Acami tayong ertolo lo kana ini ayong ayar tayong ertolo aja kan ar buntu kan aja. Lakin dona kali mono ini tamare eki jana ta ilmu kan ta tamara. Ni fikiran ar ngakro na ola adeti yangi.
Ani bagar nama juga kamu narnat juga na irkarim bar. Amagar kan lo kong ibiar no ibi gua na de kana.
Wanauza intel ile nimesikia kwamba wanauza, na tusipo recover hiyo ngamia najua itakuwa vita tu, watanini vibaya.
Akwar na kiru ya cham tigla mtu gitio mogi. Angolo lo lele bang ibi ne yakia. Akwar na kamu ya kamu ite kaba kamu ta emio. Ali mogen tayang akra ku jata mari. Allah mitingi dina kopeti na jokon dige na raiteni. Ya mi tayang emio lakini ayam tayang aku jibon.
Welcome to the GLF Nairobi Digital Film Festival, a new vision for Earth. We are previewing select films this week and again during the conference on October 11th and 12th. But today we are going behind the scenes on the spectacular film that you just saw a preview of, Between the Rains. It is a feature collaboration between the Turkana Nagaramara community, and it's a story really of childhood, of loss of innocence, of what family, tradition, and growing up looks like over 4 years of record low rainfall in northern Kenya. So I'm Salina Abraham, and I'm super excited to be joined today by director Andrew Brown and producer Samuel Ekomol, who was born and raised in the village we just saw, and who is joining us from the north, where he teaches. Welcome, Andrew and Samuel. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. So we're going to do our best with everyone's connections to keep this conversation going. But it's a truly beautiful film that you've put together. And it's such an interesting approach to profiling kind of what an experience can look like with climate change and with a changing planet. Can you tell us what brought you to this story? Why did you decide to tell it? Amongst so many other options I'm sure you ran into.
Yeah, Samuel, make sure to jump in whenever I'm done, because I'm really interested to hear kind of your thoughts on when we all started it. For me, I think what was intriguing to me is I've been working in East Africa for the last decade, mainly focused on humanitarian work. And this story kind of came a bit organically to our team. It wasn't an idea that I just had, but the producing team, Moses and Samuel, were both based in the North and reached out just with the interest in sharing their community's voice and some of the issues that pastoral communities were facing in the North. And I was just really intrigued. The time that they reached out to me, I was reading a book called Cattle Brings Us to Our Enemies, which is just all about Turkana and pastoral ecology and about how a changing climate was affecting their systems and their culture and eroding that culture. And so it all felt a bit, I think I was already in a curious state in that part of the world. And just trying to understand what was happening in some of these remote regions that were so drastically affected by climate change. And so when they reached out, I thought that it was interesting. The at the same time, I was a bit hesitant to jump in because I wasn't sure if I was the right person to help tell them the story. Just obviously being an outsider, I thought no one needed to hear my voice on this issue so much. But I was really wanting to hear the pastoral voice, but was unsure if my presence would hinder that voice and if they would really open up. So I knew that it was going to be a longer endeavor where we just followed action and trying to pursue the unguarded moments where we were catching these things in real time. And that's mainly because a lot of people in the community weren't speaking about climate change and, calling it climate change. It was just, a lot of conversation about nature being gangry. And so I thought that it was necessary for us to really take our time and give space and time for people to see what a life looked like, a stage of life looked like in such a harsh moment in time within beautiful culture and one of the oldest cultures living today.
Yeah, that's truly incredible. And I know it's not so easy to kind of go into communities that are steeped in traditions over that long period of time and then introduce kind of cameras and this new approach of documenting their everyday moments. So Samuel, I know you're close to the community, you're from the Turkana community and culture. Can you tell us why you decided to tell it? I guess out of the so many ways that you can be an advocate for your community, why was this medium important?
Okay, yeah, as a community representative and also voice of the Turkana community, actually the climate change has really impacted our community at all angles, specifically our culture, our important culture, which has been there a long time immemorial. Recently, we felt there is need to share with the whole globe the crisis because we were there, affected with them. We felt the need for the whole globe to see how climate change is affecting the pastoralist communities, is affecting their way of life. For instance, for example, we used to have regular events, traditional events that were usually conducted after every rainy season. But recently, since these climate issues came in, we no longer do them because we used to follow a specific period of time. And but now the rains could even stay for a period of 2 years without raining. And it has really affected us. So we felt there is need to share this problem using filming because it could reach a larger audience across the globe and help out to bring a common solution to this problem and also help shape the life of this community.
I'm really glad you chose to do that because the visuals are truly beautiful and you feel like you're really immersed right there in it. And you get a taste of, what these issues look like in reality. We talk about drought and you see headlines but you don't recognize necessarily what is the experience of, the everyday person, the son, the brother, the grandmother going through that experience. So it was really beautiful to feel like we were alongside you in that journey. I also want to ask Samuel, what was your emotional journey producing this film? And what was kind of going on in your heart, in your mind, and how did you manage that tension as you moved along that process?
Okay, me seeing my mom and Kole and also the rest of the community on the film, I am starting to believe that they could be an agent of change. They could be used as an agent of change and redemption to the community, the pastoral community, the Turkana community at large. And I am proud that whatever they were saying, I was able to witness because I am also part of them. Whatever they were saying and whatever they were doing, it is a real thing. that is happening.
It seems like we're losing Samuel. What I will say is, you know, I think this process of documentary filmmaking, especially verite, where you're following a story, where it's not just interview driven, but people are allowing you into their safe space, into their homes. And it's, you know, we try to shoot it in a way that it's very intimate for the viewer. So they feel like they are right there, and it creates like a story that allows and invites empathy. But the process is very invasive, right? Especially when it's an outsider, somebody who doesn't understand your culture, somebody who's from a very privileged position in the world, you know, coming from the US. You know, I've been splitting my time in between the US and Kenya and East Africa for the last just over a decade, but I'm always able to go and leave and get away from the story. For them, there is no retreat, and you're opening up your safe space, and you're talking about, you're just sharing a lot of vulnerable moments and thoughts. So, you know, it's very invasive, and I think that it's very sacrificial. Samuel's mother, Veronica, is you know, she tells her story in the film, and cousin, you know, Samuel's cousin is Colette, and they are allowing us to see just very fragile moments throughout their family's life, and allow us to be in that conversation. So it comes at a huge sacrifice. You know, they talk about how proud they are to see their family on screen and see like a positive representation of the Turkana community that often isn't seen. But the process was about 5 years, and that's a lot of life to let somebody come stay. And oftentimes I was overstaying my welcome, and I'd have to realize like, okay, you know what, there's some moments that we need to keep just for their family, and we need to give them space. And so that's why it took so long. We would come for a month or two, leave, and give them time to just get back into their daily rhythms. So yeah, it was quite an emotional journey for everyone involved, but especially the people in front of camera.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the sacrifice. I hadn't thought about that, but as I was watching it and just seeing so up close and personal, some of the rituals of, you know, becoming a man, and it is a lot to give so much of yourself to others. And part of what I really hope everyone gets from this is being able to see, is to take that sacrifice and see that, you know, the benefits come forth 100 times over. And I really identified with, you know, Colette as the sensitive kind of soul that's walking through this film. And no spoilers for those who haven't watched, but can you tell us why you chose him as the main character? What can he represent to Kenyans, but also to people across the globe?
Yeah, Colette was really interesting to us. When Moses, Samuel, and I first started this journey, we basically spent the first year just meeting with all the different households in the village. My biggest concern, having done other documentaries in the past, is knowing that when you go into a remote and a very closed off community, productions can create divisions within the community. And that was always my biggest fear in doing this. You know, if we work with one family, will suspicion or jealousy, you know, grow within their neighbor and think, why are they doing? They must be benefiting. They're not sharing with the community. So we decided that we wanted everything to be very transparent. We wanted to establish communication lines with everyone in the village. People that weren't even included in the production, we wanted to invite them in to make sure that they could share, you know, any of their input or ask questions or share concerns. And we tried to make sure that whenever we did things for the community, that it wasn't just for the families that were participating, because we didn't want to give room to resentment. Or the opportunity for resentment. So we tried to do everything communally and create dinners and things like that, where we brought food and just tried to have like big Naomi Choma together, have big community barbecues. and that created a good like family dinner experience where people in the community, we were able to get to know people that we weren't spending, you know, every day with, and hear some of their thoughts and some of their concerns. And I think that was really important because, especially as an outsider like myself, you can see a village as like this monotonous voice, this unified one voice, but it's not. It was 170 something households, and they all have different thoughts, different concerns. They were all processing things slightly different and sometimes vastly different, and they were able to share that. So it just kept us open to ideas and making sure that we weren't just portraying the community with only one voice in Kole. Kole was really interesting because on the surface, he was one of the, you know, as a young boy, every time you talk to most of the boys that we were interacting with, they talked about wanting to be a warrior, and they were always acting very brave and brazen beyond their years. Whereas Kole was a lot more unguarded, and it was actually a bit shocking because he said that he didn't want to be a warrior. Like he expressed pretty early on that he wanted a different path, but he was told that he didn't have options in life. And that was really interesting just because he was obviously at an age, you know, around 12, where he was at this precipice trying to figure out his own journey, his own path, what manhood looked like for him. But it was kind of given to him. And we saw his older brother kind of telling him who he was going to be. But Kole kind of exploring, and his curiosity was trying to take him down different paths. So that was really intriguing. I think the last thing is for Samuel, Moses, and myself, we really like that with Kole. I was also really concerned about telling a story that just played out like another African conflict film. I think that's a trope that I was actually very afraid that we were going to go in that direction. Whereas Kole, knowing that he was on this inner journey, it always allowed us, anytime we felt like we were towing the line with the external conflict, we were always able to retreat and return back to Kole. So we never felt the need to overstep and depend on external conflict to drive the story forward. And that gave us like a safe space. We knew that Kole wasn't going to engage in any sort of raiding or tribal conflict, but we knew that he was observing it. And that's the position that we wanted viewers to see this from, not from what it's like being in the bush and raiding and going into another community, but what's it like being a young man, and that's what you're seeing around, and you're seeing this unrest due to climate change. And that was just really, seemed like the appropriate place that we wanted to tell this story.
I really love that. Yeah, I was a bit worried too when I saw the trailer and the guns and all this. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can handle this. But having him as that, the medium to kind of watch it all go through and to explore the variety of emotions that happen as it all unfolds, it was a safe place, I think, as a viewer to be. And I had no idea, Samuel, that this was your family. So I'm really curious what it was like for you now that you've had the film finally come out. What do you think, Kenyans and others around the world can learn from this film and the story of your family?
Yes, Salina, I think what the rest of the Kenyans and the world globe learn from this story is that there is a corner of a place in the world that has really, really suffered due to climate change. And there is an urgent need for the world globe to put.
I think we've lost you, Samuel, at a really critical moment.
Welcome to the joys of remote production. It is, it's a shame that he is coming in and out.
Samuel, we
Can you hear me?
lost you. Yeah, no, so we had lost you just when you were saying that it's important for the globe to. So maybe if you can start back towards the beginning of what you're saying, that would be great.
Yeah, what I was saying is that we are seeing as this film, or what we are thinking that the rest of the globe and the other Kenyans would learn from this film or from these families that were taken, is that there is a place in this world, on this Kenya, that the climate change has really affected the pastoralist communities, and there is an urgent need to table together, to resonate together, to bring our ideas together, to try to mitigate this issue and provide, at the same time, provide solutions, both adaptive and mitigative measures, so that we can see this community shaping up its narratives. We can see this community also adapting to other alternative ways of living, now that this climate change has affected their cultures and it is really affecting also their lives. Maybe the whole world could bring ideas, could reason together and help this community come out from this issue.
I really hope so. I think, you know, I've been in so many sessions, events, the Global Landscapes Forum. We host lots of conferences on these issues. But this experience is probably the most memorable one for me. It's very different when you are talking about things and solutions from a kind of objective or scientific standpoint. But the reality is not, you know, 10 years ahead, it's happening right now. And so thank you for making the commitment to do this over multiple years. And so if anything, we're kind of getting the delayed look of the impact, and there's still yet more to come.
Right.
But I want to talk about the kind of second character in the film when you're watching it, which feels like nature, because there's just so many references around nature's anger and that, you know, dance between the community and what's happening. I remember one of the quotes saying, "I think the spirit of nature is angry with the city people. Their hearts must have hardened." And it just spoke so much about the divide that exists between us in like urban and rural settings, but also that interconnectedness that we can't avoid no matter what. So how would you describe that character of nature, that relationship, and what can it say about, you know, the audience, and what do you hope that we kind of take away from that? What did you learn from immersing yourself in that relationship between the traditions and nature?
Yeah, so one thing early on that was just such a huge contribution by Samuel was just educating me and Moses on just the religion and the traditional beliefs of the Turkana. And I thought there was just a great opportunity when I started hearing about Akuj and learning about Akuj, which is the god, the traditional god of the Turkana. And Akuj is the spirit of nature, both good and bad. And when I started learning a little bit about what the traditions and the ancestors believed about how God, Akuj, was a very active and present force in their life, that Akuj was the rain, but at the same time, Akuj was the drought. And what I saw was, you know, again, an opportunity to make sure that we didn't go down the path of another African conflict film where we were making another community the villain or the antagonist, and learning that, you know, Akuj was angry with the community and that was the conversation within a lot of the community. I saw there was just an opportunity to allow Akuj in nature to kind of step into that antagonist role or void that we had. And we saw how Kole in the community was processing nature on a daily basis. And I thought there was an opportunity for viewers outside the community to really see what it looks like to be aware of your presence, to be aware that the time that we have on Earth, that it does affect Earth and the climate around us. And I thought just their perception and their openness to that relationship with nature was really interesting. But it allowed us to have an antagonist that challenged Colet's inner journey, that as nature was growing more angry, we saw that there was more urgency on the community and more pressure on the community that was forcing Colet forward. And it was pushing him to fill a need that the community had. And that, once again, allowed us to make sure that this was not a film or a story that needed conflict with a neighboring community, that the neighbors, we could have gone across the river and told the exact same story, that there were no bad guys. And I think that a lot of the conversation around conflict, especially in the pastoral community, if you read the headlines in the newspapers, or you watch the news in Kenya, oftentimes the way that they talk about pastoral communities in conflict, it's always a good guy, bad guy. This community attacked this community, and they just focus on that, whereas it's really missing that antagonist and that villain, that the climate is the enemy in this situation. At the same time, it's not without cause. These are broken ecosystems that men have created. I think what's the real tragedy is that it's the communities that I'm from that have created this problem. The Western communities or some of the more industrialized nations around the world that are creating these situations and kind of angering nature, if you look at it through a Turkana lens. And that's the real tragedy to me, that there are communities, not just the Turkana, but in every corner of the world, that are bearing the brunt of our decisions. And we are so, folks from urban settings or just industrialized countries, or in the West, throughout Europe, we are so far removed from our relationship with nature, and we're so protected. But what's protecting us is this barrier of communities, and often remote and rural communities that are facing it and feeling the heat right now. So I think that was really the opportunity to make sure that nature had a voice in this film, and it wasn't a kind voice. It is letting us know in every way possible that it is angry and upset with what is happening.
Yeah, I loved you've spoken about how kind of empathetic storytelling as a way to bridge across those divides and to connect us across oceans. And I think it's been lovely to see this as an effective way to really break past the bubble that many people are in of their realities, and also past the noise of kind of the science and the news. And this gave us so many questions to think about around what is successful and useful as a way to end this internal kind of conflict between a child growing up and an angry nature. And so there's a lot left there for us to all think about as we watch and rewatch the film. But you all have been answering all the questions. So I would like you to now give us a few questions that you'd like us to think about and ponder as we're watching. What should we be asking ourselves? What do you think about that?
Samuel, jump in if you still have a signal, because I'd love to hear what you want people to ask themselves and question throughout. I would just say, when people watch this, I hope they don't just see a conflict film. I hope they see beauty in a community and a culture that most people don't really know a lot about. Even the closest city nearby is called Isiolo. And when we'd go into Isiolo to restock or rest or refuel, and people found out what we were doing, even just 30 minutes down the road, there was such a lack of knowledge about the Turkana just outside the city. And so, it is an unknown, largely unknown community. I would want people to just really appreciate and I want there to be a shift in the conversation with climate change, that it's not just thinking about the icebergs or the animals, but really the cultures that we're losing. The Turkana are around 28,000 years old. It's a culture that is one of the oldest living cultures in the world. And what would it look like, our world look like, without these traditional cultures? I think it's quite tragic if we all just turn into one big culture. I think losing the Turkana culture or other pastoral or indigenous cultures is something that's at real risk. And I would just want people, as they watch this, to really question what that looks like, what the world looks like with the loss of culture. And if all we do is become, an urban culture that is all just kind of one without, the presence of nature and how that shapes our societies, that's a scary thought to me. And I don't think that people really think about it. I know that I don't think about it enough. I think it's a shame, even though, I spent 5 years in this community. Most days I don't think about my relationship with nature or what it looks like to lose traditional cultures around. So I think that I don't know if it's a question so much. I think that it's just, hopefully it sparks a shift in the conversation about climate change, that we make sure that yes, it's important, the Arctic and, sea level and, the things that we're used to talking about with climate change and the increasing temperature of the planet, that's all very important. But what it looks like to lose culture is something that I hope we talk a little bit more of.
Thanks. And I'd love to go to Samuel. What would you hope that we are asking ourselves as we're watching the film, which will be available for free tomorrow and then again on October 11th and 12th?
Yeah, actually, I will add what Andrew has just said, that whatever you are seeing or the audience is seeing in the film is just a tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the pastoral communities. In the fact that the community has lost touch with the nature, which initially it was their friend. And to me, I think what the larger audience and the globe will be thinking is that there is an impending danger ahead that does not even necessarily the audience again and the whole world could reconnect this situation of this film with what is going on in the world currently, with the climate crisis that's going on in the world right now, and treat it as a matter of urgency, and again, treat it as a pandemic that is pending. It is yet to come, but treat it with a matter of urgency.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you both taking the time early in the morning and also in the midst of your probably lunch break while you're working, Samuel. I'm so glad that you chose to tell this story in this way, to ask us to think about the cultures that we're losing, the boys that don't want to be warriors but have no choice but to engage in a battle of life or death, and the reality that we all hold responsibility and we have a role to play to get rid of this conflict and to ensure that life and relationships and that thriving planet that we're looking for can exist. So I hope you all got to learn a little bit from this. If you didn't already watch the film, it is available for free on the festival website tomorrow, and then again during the conference, A New Vision for Earth on October 11th and 12th. Thanks so much, Andrew and Samuel, for being with us.
Thank you.